Welcome to AI for You. Today's prompt is actually a new framework I've been using since returning from MACON, the Marketing AI conference. Jeff Woods is the author of The AI Driven Leader. He created the CRIT framework, where you're basically using your large language model as a strategic advisor to interview you. The C in the acronym stands for context. So, all the background information about your unique situation, business, and goals. The R is role. So, you assign the AI a specific expert persona you want it to represent. The I is interview, where you tell the AI to ask you one question at a time, up to 3 to 5 questions to gain deeper context. And then the T is task, where you tell the AI what to do with your content after it's gathered all the necessary information from the interview. I've found this workflow to be extremely helpful in taking my expertise and knowledge and using it as the basis for content creation, strategic planning, or brainstorming, and then getting more ideas, perspectives, or insights to augment and scale my ideas. In today's episode, we explore AI integration through a unique lens. We talk with Dr. Rob McDole, the director of the Center for Teaching and Learning at Cedarville University, which is a faith-based institution. I wanted to explore the unique challenges these institutions face and how they can thoughtfully engage with AI. Let's jump right in. Well, thank you so much for joining us on the show today, Rob. And if you could start off by just telling us a little bit about how you're integrating AI into your work at Cedarville University.
So I've been using AI personally at Cedarville since probably November of 22, when my daughter came home and told me, "Dad, have you checked out ChatGPT?" So in terms of generative AI, yeah, definitely since November 2022. Not only that one, but Anthropic, a little bit of Grok, and some Gemini along the way, and then some open source models, which I'm not going to dive into through Hugging Face and running things on my own machines. But in terms of how I use it currently right now, especially through our Chat GPT EDU subscription that we have here at Cedarville, I use it to go through my email, which it's been very helpful in terms of summarizing things, finding key issues that I need to be aware of. And so I use AI a lot with that. My calendar now, with some of the tools that are connected, brainstorming, interactions with our learning management system here at Cedarville. I even do first pass grading because I also teach a course here on business ethics. And so I have it do first pass grading according to my rubrics, take a look at it, see where it went. And a lot of times I get some good comments from it. It just speeds up the process, points out issues and things that I need to be able to address with the students and how they're writing their ethics frameworks. So I'm always in the loop, however. I'm always evaluating, always looking at it, correcting. I don't just buy into it whole hog and just take it at face value. But I'm probably one of the larger users here on campus in terms of just usage of our Chat GPT EDU. I also use it for coding as well. So a lot of different projects that I've done, things that would have taken me a year, I got done in a day. It's kind of crazy.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing how it can help scale and augment your existing processes. Now, you mentioned that the campus has a EDU subscription. Are there other groups in the campus, especially on the administrative side, that are starting to leverage the tools and see some of the capabilities?
Oh, I would say yes, just based on the numbers that we're seeing inside of our EDU campus. The CIO and I both here, Micah Cooper is his name, we're helping to facilitate this EDU, ChatGPT EDU subscription for the institution. And one of the things we get to see is who's using it. And we don't see their data, but we can definitely see who's using it. I would say it's been pretty broadly utilized across the campus, students, faculty, and staff. And as you were saying, in our administrative areas as well, most certainly.
So I work with a lot of different institutions, and a lot of times in higher ed, there seems to be a bit of reluctance around adoption. What do you think are some of the major barriers that higher education institutions face when it comes to looking at integrating a technology like ChatGPT or other generative AI?
These institutions that we work in, they're not the most readily changeable. I say that being in one, and I'm thankful for that sometimes. But I think the reason for that is because we're very skeptical. We want to make sure that what we're doing is accurate, right? Especially since we're helping guide the next generation. We are a school that sees itself under the authority of Scripture and under the authority of Jesus Christ. And so we have some very strong philosophical and theological foundations that drive us and drive what we do. For that reason, then you can imagine that there's probably going to be some folks who have some very, very important questions to ask about how the technology gets used. And one of those surrounds around the idea of relationship being created in the image of God and relationships with one another, and making sure that a tool does not demean that or get in the way of our relationship with God or a relationship with others. For an institution like Cedarville, we take that seriously and we're having conversations about those things. But at the same time, we believe as stewards, we need to be able to, one, understand what is coming and speak to it, utilize it in a way that shows good stewardship and value for others. Love for others is what we would say here, as well as love for God. So I think that's probably, at least for our institution, one of the big issues that's going to undergird a lot of our conversations, and probably some hesitations that many would have in terms of using it. We just need to care for those conversations well. I think for the most part here at Cedarville, we're doing that.
Those conversations are so important. I think a lot of institutions and organizations who look to integrate these tools don't put as much thought into the responsible and ethical side of usage, and really thinking about, with each use case or each area where you start to integrate these tools, you not only have to ask, are these tools capable of doing this work, but do we want these tools to do this work? Like
Right.
sometimes if there are certain situations or certain tasks you perform that create more opportunities for human engagement, those may be things that you don't want to replace or automate. So I think those are critical conversations to have.
Yes. And I've had many with students, faculty, and staff since we've started up this fall and we brought the ChatGPT EDU. Our president, the board of trustees, as well as our VPs here have all said, yes, this is the way we want to go, but we want to have good conversations moving forward. We want to do it properly. And the president's done a good job of providing a theological boundary, if you will, for the institution and how we're to go about doing it. And I think that's provided that basis to allow us to have these conversations in a safe environment.
Yeah, and I think setting those boundaries and setting those guidelines, so many institutions will give access to the tools without setting out any guardrails or setting up any, like AI usage guidelines. I think those are so critical, not only to prevent usage outside of the way the tools are intended to be used by the institution, but also to give the users the opportunity to know that they are allowed to do these things. They are allowed to go out and play and explore and experiment with these tools. And,
Mm.
as you will fail with these tools as you learn how to function within their boundaries. And I think it's important to have those guidelines established so that people know that they have that freedom and flexibility to explore.
Mm-hmm. It just changes so quickly, though, doesn't it? I mean,
It does.
that's one of the challenges. Is it's just been, even within the models that we're using right now, there's still been significant changes. Not like in years, although it has been years, but we're talking in weeks and in months. Things just change so rapidly.
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons that I think guidelines are better than policies, is because
Mm-hmm.
policies tend to take much longer to change. But to your point, it's imperative on us that we are paying attention to the changes in these tools, and even tools that we're already using are being infused with AI, and then they're being launched within our staff as resources, but they don't necessarily always have the training or the awareness about how to use them. So I think, along with those guidelines, that awareness, that education, I think is critical to successful adoption. When you talk with people at other institutions, or if you were talking, at events, when you speak at events, what is your advice to other institutions who haven't started looking at using these tools yet?
If you're not paying attention to it, I can tell you your students are. I mean, even if you take Jeff Bezos saying that there's some sort of a bubble in the industry, that's not stopping him from building his data centers with his own chips. That's not stopping any of the others from ramping things up even more so in terms of the billions of dollars, dare I say trillions of dollars now, probably, that have been invested in just the compute side of things when it comes to large language models. I'm pretty sure I just saw a recent statistic, and I think it was from the Wall Street Journal. They basically said that of all of first round investments or early investments from VCs, like there's over a third of it for the entire world is going to AI or large language model, investments. That's a significant amount of money.
If you look back on the last 3 years on the advances that have been made and the amount of money that was invested, over the last 3 years, incredibly fast how these models have evolved. I mean, we haven't even started building all the new data centers that they've set up money for and that they're buying chips for. So yeah, the genie is not going back in the bottle.
No, and I don't think so. And so we have I think my answer to them would be, if you're not doing anything, you need to start doing something. You need to start having a conversation. One of the big things that I tell folks, if you haven't used it, please do yourself a favor, just use it. Just spend a little bit of time, even if you're against it, even if you think it's morally reprehensible, you need to have an idea of what it is that you're saying no to, right? I have no problem with someone who says no to it. If they have, an informed reason as to why they shouldn't use it, that's between them and, I would say, their creator. I'm not going to get in the middle of that. But I would say to just completely write it off, ignore it, and never experience it for yourself may not be the best thing that you could potentially do, especially if you're trying to help others move in the same way that you're wanting to move. You need to be able to speak to it with some sort of credibility. And I think that comes through using it so you really understand, what is it doing. One of the other things that I would tell folks is, don't treat it like it's a human, because it isn't. It's a machine. It's a tool. This is something that kind of strikes me as funny. Even here, there seems to be those of my brothers and sisters who would say, I say please, and I say thank you to it. And I'm just like, why? You don't say please and thank you to a pencil. Why would you say please and thank you to a robot or a machine? It's not a human. I don't show it deference. So if you keep in mind the fact that you're just working with a machine, because that's what it is, I think that would make using it maybe a little easier for some. I don't know. There's actually been some studies done that show that rude prompting actually gets you better results, which is kind of interesting.
Yep. Yeah, I definitely think our society is going to face problems from anthropomorphizing these tools and these models. But for a higher education institution whose entire purpose and goal is to set up the next generation to be, productive citizens and good people, I think not teaching them how to use these tools is doing a disservice to them as they enter into the workforce, where more and more jobs are going to require some sort of knowledge of how to use these tools. So I think that's an imperative for education in general.
Yeah, I think we would share some of that here as well. We need to, as an institution, at least for us here at Cedarville, continuing to push God's fame and his glory forward. And we don't have to worry about whether or not he's in control or not, because we believe that he is. And so that allows us to have conversations about stewardship. How can we glorify God and how we use it? What are the things that we shouldn't use it for? There's a huge desire here for myself, I know personally, but also for the institution, to help students and faculty and staff wrestle with those questions and move us further down the road with it.
Yeah, it's interesting how many side conversations come up and get started around these tools, and especially from the philosophical and theological standpoint,
Hmm.
is they're definitely going to have an impact on our society. What are some of the more interesting use cases of AI that you've seen or heard of in higher ed specifically?
I think one of the things that I've been very interested in is how does it affect teaching and learning, because that's my job. I'm the director for the Center of Teaching and Learning here at Cedarville University. How can it help students learn and grasp the things that they actually need to have in their heads to become the professionals that they need to become? Our podcast that we do here as part of that is called Transform Your Teaching. And we had a guest on our show by the name of Dr. Barbara Oakley, and she is one of the co-authors of the book Uncommon Sense Teaching. And her approach to it, just to learning in general, comes from a cognitive brain science, how we learn and how the brain takes things in and makes connections and makes physical, connections inside our brains, how that all works. And it's extremely fascinating. But one of the things that she put forward to us was that recall is one of the more important parts of making sure that we're learning something. So not multiple choice tests, not true false, but actually having to go through the effort of recalling information that we've studied or that we've been exposed to. And there's a rhythm to it. And the more you do it, the more you space that recall out. And I think one of the most interesting uses is the study tool, especially for us here using ChatGPT EDU, that students can take their notes, they can take content from the course, stuff that we have inside of Canvas, and they can start studying. And they can study in a way that will help them remember those things and not just train to pass a test, right? But really make it stick. And in making it stick, become professionals as they continue to scaffold their knowledge. And so I think it's a faster way to get there, though. And using AI for that is very interesting to me, and to see how much we can leverage those things that would help us minimize the rote learning that needs to occur. Let me be clear, that needs to occur. And then making gold, what I call gold time, the relationship between the student and the teacher and the students as a whole, making that more important, being able to bring more of that connection in, having conversations that are meaningful around the content instead of spending most of your time assessing whether or not it's there in the student's head to begin with. That's got some potential for sure to help do some different things in higher ed and give us a little bit more efficiency, as well as not just in how faculty are utilized, but also how students learn and how quickly that maybe they could move on to other things and change the way we approach subjects and learning in general.
These tools are going to provide incredible opportunities for us to personalize learning for each individual student based on how they learn the best, as opposed to trying to teach the same content to an entire class who all learn differently. If you can get them to all learn the material the way that they learn it the best, and then have them have discussions and internalize that and connect with that knowledge in a way that we just don't have time for in the current learning environment, I think
Right.
that's going to be a huge unlock for education.
I don't disagree. I mean, there's only so many relationships you can have at one time that are meaningful. I was at a South by Southwest EDU conference many, many years ago, like when it first started up. I'll never forget, one of the key speakers raised his hand and he was answering a question from the audience, and he raised his hand and he said, I can only handle probably 12 really deep relationships at one time. And I thought, well, that's interesting, at least from a biblical perspective. Jesus had 12 disciples. And I thought, that's kind of key. And it's always been something that's kind of stuck in my head. And that's one of the challenges. I think that's something that's valued really, really well here at Cedarville, again, from our background. And we want to have those kinds of relationships. We want to have what we call those discipleship types of relationships. And so if this tool can help us magnify those things, give us more time to be able to have those kinds of relationships, get the most out of them for building each other up, then I say bring it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the more time we can spend creating those collaborations and that teamwork and leadership and public speaking and presenting, all of those real human skills, I think we don't spend enough time on those a lot of time in education. You mentioned earlier the speed, the pace of AI and how quickly it is racing forward. Where do you see things going in the next year or two, and how do you think that's going to impact the higher education domain?
Whew. If it keeps at this pace, again, I don't have anything to base this on. This is just my intuition. So let me be clear to those who are listening. But it seems to me that not only is this pace pushing us forward, maybe in ways we don't want to be, but it also seems to be pushing just normal technologies that are already existing into higher levels of transformation as well at a faster pace. I mean, you just think about the power dynamic, and what I mean by that is like literal power, like electricity. What's needed to just drive generative models and the compute that's needed and all that's going into making NVIDIA chips or Amazon chips or Broadcom chips or whoever. You've just got all these deals being done. It seems like every time I turn around, there's a new deal being done, not just here in the United States, but overseas as well. And so it's a global race, it seems. All these tools seem to be connected to each other, and I think LLM generation as well, is going to need to be tied to someone. And so I think identity is going to be, at some point, it's going to pop its head up as a real big issue. I mean, we already know it's a big issue inside of cybersecurity, right? And now with large language models, generative AI, the schemes, I don't know if you've been hit by any of them, the emails or text messages that seem to be coming. I mean, I'm even talking about snail mail stuff has gotten better. It's not some prince in Nigeria that's trying to get money from you. It seems like it's your next door neighbor,
Or
somebody
your
that
bank.
you know, or your bank. Yeah. Somebody that you
Yeah.
trust, and they're leveraging these relationships. Agentic AI is most certainly the future. I think if you look around, you'll probably see it if you haven't already experienced it yourself. Agent mode is what's currently there for ChatGPT EDU. Those of us who have access to it here can use it, and it's just gotten better. I mean, I remember when it first came out, I think it was called Operator. Do you remember that,
Right.
when ChatGPT
Oh,
did
yeah.
Operator? That was
Pretty bad.
amazing. Yeah, it was. But I'm blown away. I mean, one of my favorite tools to use right now is not even Agent. I like using Codex CLI. For your listeners who don't know what I'm talking about, that's command line interface. So basically, I'm calling up Codex, which is ChatGPT's version of ChatGPT 5, I think is what they're running, their model that actually is connected to my command line. And so it has access to whatever I give it in my command line. So, as we like to say, the old school tools. And it can do command line scripting. It can do Python. It can do JavaScript. It can do all these things on top of the normal ChatGPT kinds of questions that you might ask it, but you can get it to actually automate stuff on your computer and do things for you. I'm now connecting apps that I've wanted to connect for like years because they wouldn't create an API for it so that you could automate something. And now you can. I'm thinking and extrapolating that out. What's that going to look like when it gets into robots? What's that going to look like when it gets into, and I think it probably already is. I'm showing my ignorance because I don't know. I haven't been paying attention to that side of things because honestly, the changes just within the models themselves have kept me busy enough to just try to figure out what's the best way to prompt them. How are they moving? Because it does feel somewhat like a moving target. It's blowing me away in terms of that part. So I can only imagine what that's going to look like when robots are released that can do more than just vacuum and mop my floor, right?
Yeah. And they've already got, even humanoid robots that are out there now being trained on how to perform a bunch of household tasks. But more than just the fact that they're being trained on tasks, they are now being trained by audio, video, tactile interactions. So it's not just being trained off the internet anymore. Now you're being trained on the real world. So that's going to exponentially increase the capabilities of these models. So pretty incredible what we're moving into here. So one of the questions I always finish the interviews with is what specific AI use case is most useful and helpful to you, either personally or professionally?
The use case that I have enjoyed, having been trained a little in Hebrew and then quite a bit in Koine Greek or Biblical Greek, is being able to work with the original texts that are out and available. It does a really good job in helping me analyze passages, analyze ideas, follow trains of thought, where otherwise I'd have to go to a really massive book, start looking up indexes of words, seeing where they're related, and then just the ability to investigate and study context as well as meaning of passages and of words. I use it to study and I use it to dig in deeper than what I may not have been able to do otherwise because, my Hebrew's rusty and I don't understand everything.
Well, I can't thank you enough for your time and bringing your insights to our audience. If anyone wants to follow you further or connect with you, what's the best way for them to do that?
You can find me on LinkedIn, Robert McDole. I'm also, if you want to contact me, it's just rmcdole@cedarville.edu. We do have a podcast that I and my colleague, Dr. Jared Piles, do in terms of Transform Your Teaching. Happy to connect with folks there as well. So, yeah, it's the best way to get in contact with me.
Excellent. Well, thank you again. Really appreciate you coming on the show.
It's been great. Thank you, Brian.
Dr. McDole's perspective offers valuable insights for institutions wrestling with AI adoption, particularly those with strong philosophical or theological foundations. His emphasis on treating AI as a tool rather than anthropomorphizing it cuts through much of the hype and confusion surrounding these technologies. The concept of establishing theological boundaries while still engaging with AI demonstrates how institutions can maintain their core values while embracing technological advancement. This approach provides a framework that extends beyond faith-based institutions to any organization with strong ethical commitments. Rob's insights about spaced recall and gold time highlight one of AI's most promising applications in education, handling the mechanical aspects of learning so humans can focus on meaningful relationships and deeper understanding. This aligns with the broader theme we've seen throughout this podcast. AI's greatest value lies in augmenting human capabilities and creating more space for authentic human connection and community. The warning about identity verification and AI-enabled deception reminds us that as these tools become more capable, the challenges they create grow alongside the opportunities. Institutions must remain vigilant about both the positive applications and potential misuses of AI technology. Perhaps most importantly, Rob's call for even skeptics to engage with and understand AI before dismissing it reflects mature institutional thinking. You cannot make informed decisions about technology you refuse to experience. And preparing the next generation requires educators and administrators to understand these tools that the students will encounter throughout their careers. Please reach out to me with unique ways that you're integrating AI into your professional and personal lives. And as always, blue skies and keep creating.